All right, so what's next for the San Francisco 49ers? And are they looking to make a move to really bolster this roster going into the 2023 season or even in the early portion of the 2023 campaign? That's what we're talking about on today's San Francisco 49ers Report. I'm Chase Sr. No matter where you are, how you're tuned in, we appreciate you for watching the show. And really what I want to focus in on today's program, we'll talk about Brian Burns. We're going to also talk about Chandler Jones. He could be on his way out with the Las Vegas Raiders. First, though, in case you missed it, I talked about a potential Brandon Ayuk contract extension because I do believe that with San Francisco opening up $23 million in cap space after the restructures of George Kittle and Trent Williams, like any good business does, they could be looking ahead into the future with trying to keep and maintain Brandon Ayuk on this roster. That video is on the channel. Go back and watch it. So you look at the financial moves for the Niners here. They signed Nick Bosa to that $170 million contract. It spans 5 years. He gets $34 million per year, overtakes Aaron Donald as the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of football. But also, on top of that, San Francisco's front office very busy during that historic Wednesday. They restructured the contract for Kittle. They restructured the contract for Trent Williams, and in the process, freed up the aforementioned $23 million. With the Kittle restructure specifically, according to Over the Cap, very good service, San Francisco will save $9.2 million in 2024, $8.8 million in 2025, only $80,000 this year. So clearly, they're thinking ahead here. And that's why I alluded to the Brandon Ayuk contract extension, because next year is the final year of his contract, fifth-year option, and it's a guaranteed 1 year. As for the Trent Williams restructure, $14.2 million in 2024 and 2025, and then $15.5 million in 2026. On top of everything that I've said, I think this is also good news for San Francisco, because I would imagine this means that Kittle, Trent Williams, they have plans personally, and the organization has plans as well to keep them on this roster as part of this core. And how often have we been talking about this Super Bowl window being open for this current crew over the next 2 to 5 years, especially with Brock Purdy on that rookie contract? That's why you have to maximize this current window, and that's why I thought it was so important for Nick Bosa to get that deal done. Before we take a look at Brian Burns and Chandler Jones, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're closing in on 85,000 subscribers, and I can guarantee you this. Whenever the Niners make a move, especially if it's a trade for Chandler Jones, Brian Burns, we're going to cover it here on the show, because every transaction the Niners make, we have you covered right here on the program. As for the latest on Brian Burns, interesting scenario with the Carolina Panthers defensive end, who's one of the best edge rushers in the game. He's entering the final year of his contract. He wants a new deal. This year in 2023, base salary and a cap hit of $16 million. He was a first-round pick, 16th overall in the 2019 NFL draft out of Florida State. And ever since Carolina drafted him out of FSU, the Seminoles, by the way, looked awesome week 1 against LSU for the diehard college football fans out there. He has produced really, really quality sack numbers. The Burns situation has been different than the Nick Bosa situation. Bosa held out for 44 days. Brian Burns, on the other hand, conducted a hold-in. He was at every training camp practice, every meeting, but this week, leading into the season opener, missed a couple of practices. That was a part of his holdout, and then he returned to practice on Wednesday. Even with the contract situation with Burns, being unhappy with the current situation in Carolina, Frank Reich did name him a team captain. So he is revered in that locker room and very widely respected. Now, a lot of people in the Niner atmosphere, stratosphere, are talking about this Brian Burns trade, and we've talked about it here on the show dating back a season or two ago, partially because the edge rushing combination between Bosa and Brian Burns. Bosa and Burns, can you imagine that being on a shirt? It would be lethal. A funny jersey swap here for Brian Burns put together by SF Niners, but can you imagine these two players and the game planning that would have to take place by opposing offenses? They'd have nightmares at night. quarterbacks wouldn't be able to rest because these guys are very, very good players. So with that, we tee up our first poll question of today's show. Should the Niners trade for Brian Burns? I'll be looking down in the comment section to see what you say. Give me a T for trade or a P for pass. We always appreciate your feedback down below in the comment section. As I mentioned, Burns' career has gotten off to a terrific start. He's drafted in the first round in 2019 out of Florida State, and he hits the ground running. 7.5 sacks as a rookie. Same draft class, by the way, as Nick Bosa. Bosa, as a rookie, had 9 sacks in his rookie campaign. Burns that year also added 16 quarterback hits. He's also been really good with TFLs. Very active in the backfield. In 2020, ups the sack total to 9 with 21 quarterback hits and 8 tackles for loss. In 2021, another really productive season. 9 sacks once again with 18 quarterback hits and 13 tackles for loss. He also has this ability to play the pass, jump up, and knock down some passes. And in 2022, everything kind of came together. Obviously, he was looking to land that lofty contract extension. 12.5 sacks, 22 quarterback hits, 17 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups in what was a career year. What I like about Burns, it's the bend coming off the edge. It's the explosiveness. He's a little bit slighter than Nick Bosa. Not as stocky, but a little bit taller. But even though he is a little bit taller, able to get some really good leverage on opposing offensive tackles. And the versatility to his game, you can line him up at right defensive end, left defensive end, and there's no doubt you put him next to Nick Bosa, he's better than Drake Jackson. He's better than Clelin Ferrell. More expensive, for sure. But this San Francisco 49ers organization has shown that they do prioritize the defensive line, and I agree with that team-building strategy. Next up, Burns' Pro Football Focus numbers. This is pretty interesting because this does tell a story. For instance, and for context, Nick Bosa's overall Pro Football Focus grade and his pass rush grade were both north of 90. Brian Burns can't say the same. Overall grade last year of 64.5, not as good against the run as Nick Bosa is. Bosa was in that 80th percentile. Burns at 50.9. His pass rush grade only 71.3, but this is what you like to see here. Nick Bosa had 90 total pressures last year. Brian Burns had 68, and then Burns able to add those 44 quarterback hurries. This could be a byproduct of that Panthers defense struggling last year, but also another reason that we're talking about Burns, that Panthers defense was solid. I'm talking about the personnel around him impacting his numbers. You know who knows Brian Burns really well? Steve Wilks, former Panthers defensive coordinator, current Niners defensive coordinator. We'll talk Chandler Jones here coming up around the corner. First, though, if you want to support the show, support the Niners, and get some gear for the upcoming 2023 campaign, San Francisco. Get your shirts right now. They've been flying off the shelves. We've been sending them out like crazy across the pond, the Atlantic Ocean, across the Pacific Ocean to Australia, and all across America. Chatsports.com/SF. You see the link down below. Get your shirts today, available in red as well as black, and it goes a long way in supporting the program here as well. So we talk about Brian Burns. Now let's talk about another potentially available edge rusher in Chandler Jones. There's a lot going on this front with the Las Vegas Raiders, as it seems as though the Raiders can never escape dysfunction. Jones went on a social media tirade on Tuesday, claiming that he did not want to play for the Las Vegas Raiders any longer. He said, I don't want to play for this general manager. I don't want to play for Josh McDaniels. Then he unfollowed the Raiders as well as Max Crosby, weirdly enough, on Instagram. And then he did not practice on Wednesday either. And then on Wednesday night, he took to Instagram once again, and he was complaining about how the Raiders sent cops to his home to check in on him. He was posting a screenshot with Josh McDaniels. That sounds really messy. Is something going on inside his head? Does he need to seek help? Is that why the Raiders sent him help? There was a report that he tried to access the Raiders facility in the wee hours of the morning, and they denied his key access. Weird stuff going on. Mitchell Renz was also telling me, as the host of the Raiders Report, that he lost a bunch of weight at the end of last year and didn't really practice or play going into the game against the San Francisco 49ers. I'm kind of concerned about the dude, but he's also a really, really solid player, and he's on the trade block potentially. Last 4 years for him, in 2019, he was awesome. 19 sacks, 53 tackles, 20 tackles for loss. In 2020, only played in 5 games. 2021, he comes back with 10.5 sacks. And then last year, 15 games played. Lost that weight, which I didn't love. And because of that, I think he lost a little bit of his physicality, down to 4.5 sacks. The Pro Football Focus numbers, okay. Not special by any means. Able to log 748 snaps for the Raiders last year. Overall PFF grade of 63.8, and then a run defense grade of 65.5, a pass rush grade of 60.4. Sometimes in instances like this, these types of players need a change of scenery. He's a veteran. He's a little bit older. Yes, he is a little bit expensive, but you get him right. You get him playing in this scheme where he's playing alongside Nick Bosa. Maybe you get some of that production, but no doubt I'm going with the younger player here in Brian Burns. And frankly, I'm not touching Chandler Jones, but this is America. You can disagree with me if you want. So you see the question here to my right. Pick an edge rusher here. Who would you rather go with? Brian Burns, Chandler Jones. Type BB or CJ. I'm going Brian Burns all day. Give me Burns and Bosa on that defensive line for San Francisco. Appreciate y'all for watching. If you're watching us live right now on our Thursday live show, don't go anywhere. We're just heating up.